How do you establish the fire and safety risks in commercial properties?
Fire safety officers will go out to commercial premises, do an inspection. The occupier of the premise has a certain amount of information they have to fill in, and then they'll take that and put it onto the system.
So that's prior to an incident taking place.
Yes.
What do you do when you're faced with an incident and you're actually on site assessing the risk of a particular property? What sources of information have you got available?
The first thing you see is a primary form, which is a summary. It's almost like your first hit aid memoir. We then would collate the information on that, the hazards and risks on that, and pull out. We've got availability to get our service instructions and our standard operational procedures and our generic risk assessments based on that type of property. So again, if you think about the School of Topical Medicine, again, there's a big fire there. We'd have an SSRI on the place. We look up fires in biohazards, for example. They would have that, all that sort of aid memoir and checklist, all available via the MDT. Other risk information would be then required via specialists through control.
Why did you introduce iPads to be used by the officers?
So the limitations prior, the MDTs were in place. There's risk information available in the MDTs, which is being captured by the crews. And the challenge is to bring the officers up to speed to match what the crews have got.
You say that the challenge was bringing the officers up to speed with the same level of information that the service crews had. Why would the officers not simply just use the information that's available on the MDT? Why is there two kind of sources of information?
I think because the MDTs are fixed in the cab, the MDTs have got two uses: data mobilisation and the critical information on it. Then it would be that they're designed that the fire appliances turn up, the officer in charge has got the risk information in the cab. Now, if Richie can correct me, but he's got more of a roving role. If you've got 6 appliances at an incident, if you have a house fire, you send 2 appliances. If you've got a factory, we might have an agreed, determined attendance of 4 appliances. And because Richie's involved, there might be 6. When he goes out, he's more fluent. He doesn't want to be sitting in a cab on an MDT.
What were the considerations that you made technically and operationally as to what devices you were going to use and how you were going to implement them?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest factors was usability. So we tested 3 or 4 different tablet devices. I think we had a Lenovo ThinkPad, Microsoft Surface, iPad, and maybe one other. And the iPad always came out on top for usability.
In the considerations then for the new setup, where did security feature within that, and what security considerations did you have?
Well, personally, it was device management. We need to know where the devices are. We need to be able to stun the devices in case they're locked. We looked at encryption of the data while it's on those devices. We've got the thorny issue of passwords, whether they be a 4-digit password or whether they be a 16-digit, very complicated mixture of numbers, letters, hieroglyphics and things like that. And the fact that how often do we make people change those passwords, and if they are, the strong passwords, then it's difficult.
Can you just say a little bit about what the policies you have are for your staff and how you go about implementing them?
We have an overarching information security policy, and we have an overarching acceptable usage of ICT policy, and underpinning those we have service instructions around the use of the internet, around the personal use of mobile phones, around the fact that people can't just download stuff and open it, because that is a danger. So we have those service instructions in place as guidance for people to use. We give access to social media. We don't want to exclude social media. We don't want to prevent people from surfing the internet, but we want the concept of being responsible, aligned with the values of the organisation, it's that responsible use of ICT, because everybody in the organisation is responsible for cybersecurity.
How do you train your staff on policies? How do you go about that?
But
Well, it's probably
it's cascaded.
It's cascaded, and more to probably to do with my job. So anything that comes from electric into hard copy it should be either locked up in a filing cabinet on the station. The stations themselves have security policies, so physically no one should be able to get to it. And part of my job is to sort of quality assure, make sure that that's not happened. So again, sensitive data left out with someone's name, address on a form that they may have filled in to put onto the tough book later on for whatever reason. For some people, just again, they'd rather have a form where they'll write everything down and transfer it electronically. That's got to then be shredded, or that's got to be secured, and that is a big issue. You know, when people still want the piece of paper in the hand, and them leaving that piece of paper around is probably our biggest risk.
So how often then would you say you conduct risk assessments on either your physical or your information assets within the organisation?
Well, one of the things about being a public organisation is that you are open to and frequently have audits. At this point in time, we have an internal audit running, looking at our assets and our asset management assets, being any ICT assets, any estate assets and any vehicle assets. At the same time, we've got external audit in, looking at our systems, and there is a national programme to move to a new emergency services network, which will be 4G, and to join that club, the people who provide the 4G want to know that you are secure, cybersecurity, and they will demand the code of connection.
Okay, right. That's great. Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
That's
Okay.
been
No problem.
really insightful.